Imagine you are going to a massive neighborhood potluck dinner.
Okay, I love a good potluck.
Right. And the rule is simple. Everybody brings their absolute best dish. In theory, it's this perfect, highly efficient system.
Everyone gets fed, there's a huge variety of food.
Exactly. Everyone goes home happy. But then, the system starts to glitch. One neighbor brings a potato salad that they secretly know has been sitting in the hot sun for 3 days.
All that is terrible.
Yeah, and another neighbor decides to, stand guard over the dessert table and charge people $20 a slice.
A true entrepreneur.
Right, and then half the neighborhood assumes someone else will bring the paper plates, so nobody brings plates at all, and you're left, I don't know, eating chili out of your hands.
So it's a complete culinary disaster. But, it's also a perfect mirror for what happens when the invisible guiding hand of the economy completely fumbles.
Exactly. We like to think the free market is this flawless, self-correcting machine that naturally provides what we need. But when you step into the real world, you realize the potluck is full of expired potato salad and, dessert hoarders.
It really is.
So, welcome to today's deep dive. We're
Right.
thrilled you could join us because today we're looking at those glitches in the system. We have a fascinating stack of sources for you today.
We really do.
Yeah, we've got foundational economic lecture notes on market failures, a really sharp market report on the Chinese government's antitrust crackdown on Alibaba.
Which is a wild story.
It is. And finally, a massive, just eye-opening environmental report from the World Wildlife Fund regarding global overfishing.
It's quite the stack.
Yeah.
And it all centers around one core concept, which is we generally trust the free market to allocate resources efficiently. But what happens when it doesn't?
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to explore market failure. Those moments when the free market breaks down due to hidden information, unchecked power, and shared resources. And to understand how markets fail, we really have to start at the individual level. We have to start with the secrets that buyers and sellers keep from each other.
Because the whole free market model assumes complete transparency.
Yeah.
Right. It assumes everyone has perfect information.
Exactly, but reality is heavily skewed.
What's fascinating here is the concept of asymmetric information. It simply means buyers and sellers, well, they don't have equal access to information. Someone is hiding something.
Right.
And when that happens, the market fails to allocate resources properly. Let's start with when sellers hold the cards, your expired potato salad scenario.
Yeah.
Think about the used car market. The seller knows about that weird rattle in the transmission that only happens at highway speeds. The buyer doesn't.
Or take food safety.
Yeah.
The meat packer knows if their factory floor is unsanitary.
Exactly.
And medicine is a really dangerous arena for this. Pharmaceutical corporations might quietly bury the data from unsuccessful drug trials.
Or downplay the negative side effects.
Right. Or you might have doctors practicing who actually lack the specific expertise or the qualifications to administer certain treatments, and the patient has absolutely no way of knowing.
Precisely. And the economic result of this secret-keeping is profound. Let's look at the mechanism. If buyers actually knew about these hidden dangers, they would naturally demand less of the product.
The market would self-correct?
Exactly, leading to a smaller allocation of resources to those goods. But the real danger is when buyers are kept in the dark.
Because they don't know the risk, they keep buying.
Yes. You get a dangerous overallocation. People are consuming things that are actively harmful simply because they lack the data to make an informed choice.
Wow.
Workplace safety is another classic example. Employers know the risks of the factory floor. Employees might not, leading to an overallocation of labor to unsafe jobs.
So this is where the government typically steps in to force transparency, right? They respond with regulations, food safety standards, building codes, toy safety laws.
Or licensure, yeah. Requiring doctors, lawyers, teachers to pass standardized exams before they can charge you for a service.
But I have to push back a little here, or at least play devil's advocate. It's kind of like playing a sport with a really, really strict referee.
Okay, how so?
Well, yes, it keeps things fair and stops people from getting hurt. But having a referee blow the whistle every 30 seconds slows the whole game down.
Right. It is incredibly time-consuming.
It's bureaucratic. And it is massively costly for businesses to comply with all these quality assurances. There is a huge opportunity cost to all that regulation.
That is the ultimate trade-off, isn't it? We pay for safety with efficiency. But let's flip the script. We just talked about the seller hiding things.
Okay.
What if the buyer is the one with the secret? This leads to two major economic headaches: moral hazard and adverse selection.
Moral hazard. That sounds intense.
It does. It happens when one party takes on risks, but doesn't face the full cost of those risks. It is absolutely rampant in the insurance industry.
Oh, totally.
Think about it. If you buy comprehensive car theft insurance, you might suddenly feel comfortable parking in a less safe neighborhood overnight.
Because I'm covered.
Right. You actually changed your behavior because you're protected. You have hidden information about your future reckless behavior that the insurance company doesn't have.
And the insurance companies aren't stupid, so they respond by adding deductibles, or what are often called excesses, out-of-pocket expenses you have to pay before the insurance check clears.
Exactly.
But here's where it gets incredibly interesting, because this creates a fascinating behavioral divide based on income.
How so?
Well, lower-income earners are generally highly price-sensitive, so they often pick low-cost monthly premiums attached to high deductibles.
Right, that makes sense.
But because they chose that route, they're actually less likely to engage in risky behavior. They know they simply cannot afford that massive out-of-pocket hit if they crash their car.
Ah, I see.
Meanwhile, high-income earners pick high monthly premiums with low deductibles, making them more likely to drive recklessly because a fender bender won't ruin them financially.
Wow.
The wealthy driver with full coverage is actually the riskier bet.
It's a brilliant paradox. And then there's adverse selection, which is slightly different. This is when buyers of insurance have more knowledge about their actual inherent health conditions than the seller does.
Right.
Naturally, an unhealthy person who knows they need frequent medical care is far more likely to buy comprehensive health insurance than a perfectly healthy 25-year-old.
Which is an absolute nightmare for the insurance companies. If their risk pool is only filled with sick people, they face massive payouts.
Huge payouts.
So to protect themselves, before regulations were put in place, they would just outright refuse to insure people over a certain age or deny anyone with a pre-existing condition.
Which means the market completely fails to provide a necessary service. And if private companies refuse to supply enough insurance to the population, governments often step in. A prime example of a government response to adverse selection is offering citizen insurance.
Right, like in the United States, that took the form of the Affordable Care Act, commonly known as Obamacare.
Yes. Now, it's worth looking at this purely through the lens of economics.
Right, taking the politics entirely out of it.
Exactly. Regardless of the intense politics surrounding the legislation, structurally, the individual mandate was designed as a specific economic tool to correct adverse selection.
Just a mechanism to fix the glitch.
Right. By requiring healthy people to buy into the system, it balances out the risk pool. It forces the market to function rather than collapse under the weight of hidden health information.
It forces the healthy people into the pool to subsidize the sick people. So if asymmetric information is about a hidden advantage, a secret that skews the game, what happens when someone has an overt, insurmountable advantage?
You're talking about the dessert hoarder from the potluck?
Exactly. The guy openly guarding the dessert table and charging for access. We are moving from an information failure to a pure power failure.
We are talking about monopolies. And if we connect this to the broader economic theory, a monopoly is a market structure where a single firm completely dominates.
Right.
Crucially, there are incredibly high barriers to entry. It is just too expensive or legally difficult for new competitors to pop up and challenge them. This makes the monopolist a price maker.
Because without any competition breathing down their neck, they don't have to produce goods efficiently at the lowest cost.
No, they don't.
And they certainly don't have to sell them for the lowest price. They hold all the leverage. You either buy from them or you go without.
And the social cost of this is severe. Economists use terms like welfare loss, productive inefficiency, and allocative inefficiency.
Okay, lots of terms.
Yeah, productive inefficiency simply means the company isn't bothering to make things at the lowest possible cost because they don't have to.
Lazy, basically.
Kind of, yeah. But allocative inefficiency is the real damage.
Right. Let's unpack that term, because allocative inefficiency sounds like textbook jargon. Basically, it means the monopoly is hoarding.
Yes.
Society is practically begging for more of this product, and it wouldn't even cost the company that much to produce more of it. The marginal benefit to society is much greater than the cost to make it.
But they don't make it.
No. The monopolist artificially starves the market. They intentionally restrict the output just to keep the price tag incredibly high. They produce less than society actually wants and needs.
Perfectly stated. Which brings us to a fascinating real-world case study. The Chinese government's antitrust crackdown on Alibaba.
Oh, Oh, this is a crazy story.
It really is. So a few years ago, the government drafted strict anti-monopoly guidelines, specifically targeting practices like predatory pricing.
Which is dropping prices so low you bankrupt your competitors.
Right. And stopping platforms from restricting merchants from working with rival sites. The timing was brutal, too. Alibaba stock slumped right around their massive Singles' Day shopping event, 11/11.
The market panicked at the thought of government intervention breaking up their power.
Exactly.
But here's where it gets really interesting and honestly a little counterintuitive. Aaron Kessler, an analyst at Raymond James, looked at this massive government crackdown and told his clients to actually buy Alibaba stock on the pullback.
Which sounds insane.
Right. I genuinely don't get that logic. How on earth does a government regulation designed to curb a monopoly actually help the monopoly?
It is a brilliant contradiction. Kessler argued that these antitrust guidelines wouldn't materially hurt Alibaba's core revenues. Instead, by banning predatory pricing, the government might accidentally stop scrappy new entrants from aggressively lowering their own prices to steal market share from Alibaba.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The law meant to curb the giant actually removes the primary weapon a small startup would use to fight them.
That is wild. So the regulation meant to level the playing field might just accidentally build a legislative moat around Alibaba, locking in their dominance.
Exactly. It shows how incredibly tricky government intervention can be when dealing with market power.
So what else can governments do?
Well, typically, solutions to monopolies include anti-monopoly laws. Breaking companies up in court, like we've seen with Standard Oil, or the ongoing scrutiny of tech giants like Google.
Right.
Other solutions include regulating natural monopolies like water and power grids, outright nationalization where the government just takes over the industry.
Or trade liberalization, right? Which means removing tariffs to let foreign competition flood the market and break the domestic monopolies' grip.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've seen what happens when someone hoards the good stuff and charges a fortune. But what happens when everyone assumes someone else will bring the plates?
The paper plates problem.
Right. We're talking about goods that the free market refuses to produce at all. Goods where there is literally no way for a private company to turn a profit.
This is the realm of public goods. And for something to be a pure public good, it has to meet two very strict criteria.
Okay, what are they?
First, it must be non-rivalrous.
Yeah.
That means my consumption of the good doesn't reduce your ability to consume it.
Got it.
Second, it must be non-excludable. Once the good is provided to the public, it is impossible to stop someone who hasn't paid from enjoying its benefits.
National defense is the classic example here. The military protects the whole country. You cannot exclude your neighbor from being protected just because they figured out a way to dodge their taxes.
Right.
And your protection doesn't diminish theirs. Street lighting, lighthouses, police protection, these are pure public goods.
And this creates a massive human behavioral flaw known as the free rider problem.
The ultimate potluck sin.
Exactly. Think about human nature. If you absolutely cannot be excluded from enjoying a benefit, why on earth would you voluntarily pay for it?
You wouldn't.
You wouldn't. You just let someone else foot the bill and enjoy the light from the street lamp anyway. And because people won't pay, private firms have absolutely zero incentive to produce these goods.
The market completely fails to allocate resources here.
So the government is forced to step in, provide these goods directly, and finance them through mandatory taxation.
Let's give you a quick analogy to test this so you can spot public goods in your own life. Think about Netflix versus a toll road.
Okay, Netflix.
Netflix is a private good. It is highly excludable. If you don't pay your monthly subscription, they lock your account.
That's for sure.
And it can actually be rivalrous if everyone in your neighborhood tries to stream a movie in 4K at the exact same time and your local bandwidth crashes.
Good point.
But a toll road, that is what economists call a quasi-public good. It's excludable because there is a physical toll booth, but it's non-rivalrous, well, at least until rush hour hits and it becomes a congested parking lot.
Right. Public parks and public museums with entrance fees also fit into this messy middle ground.
Definitely.
This raises an important question, though. When the government is forced to step in and provide pure public goods, how do they decide how much to spend? It's called the calculation dilemma.
Because it's not a normal market.
Exactly. How do you accurately calculate the exact expected benefit to society?
Right, because there's no price tag to guide them. Imagine a government wanting to fund a massive system of coastal flood defenses.
Okay.
How do they justify that multi-billion-dollar cost when millions of inland taxpayers who live hundreds of miles from the ocean and will never see a drop of floodwater actively resent paying for it?
They don't want to pay for a seawall.
No, the market can't tell you the right amount of seawall to build. It just becomes pure, often messy public policy.
Which perfectly connects to the final and maybe most urgent failure of the free market.
Right.
Just talked about public goods, the benefits that we actively try to create.
Right.
But there's an entirely different kind of failure when we look at the shared gifts of nature that we take from.
We are talking about common access resources, or CARs, clean air, open seas, fertile soil, the global climate.
Yes. And it's vital to understand the distinction here. Like public goods, common access resources are non-excludable. No one owns the open ocean, so there is no price tag, and you can't stop a boat from dropping a net.
Okay, but
But unlike public goods, they are rivalrous. If I catch a fish, you cannot catch that same fish. My consumption directly and permanently diminishes your opportunity.
and that specific combination, non-excludable but highly rivalrous, creates a terrifying incentive. It creates the tragedy of the commons.
Yes.
Because nobody owns the resource, nobody protects it. Everybody has an overwhelming incentive to exploit the resource as fast as humanly possible, to extract maximum profit before someone else beats them to it.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is the fundamental tension between economic growth and environmental preservation.
Oh, absolutely.
The economic machine demands constant increased output and consumption. The environment demands preservation and regeneration. And this tragedy plays out across the entire income spectrum.
What do you mean by that?
Well, high-income economies cause what's termed pollution of affluence. Massive reliance on fossil fuels to power comfortable lifestyles, creating huge negative externalities for the rest of the globe.
Right, the carbon footprint of wealth.
Exactly. But then there is poverty pollution. Poor communities are forced to overexploit scarce resources just to survive today.
Oh, I see.
They cut down critical forests for firewood, they farm fragile mountainsides causing massive soil erosion, or they are forced into processing the world's toxic refuse, like the devastating e-waste dumps in Accra, Ghana.
It's just a cycle of extraction. And if you want to see what this tragedy looks like in real time, just look at the oceans.
The WWF report.
Yes, the data from the World Wildlife Fund report on global overfishing is absolutely staggering. Right now, fully 1/3 of all assessed global fisheries have been pushed beyond their biological limit.
1/3.
Yes. Humanity is catching fish significantly faster than the stocks can possibly replenish themselves.
And the sheer scale of the operation is what's driving it. There are 4 million fishing vessels currently plying the oceans.
4 million.
4 million. The WWF estimates that is up to 2.5 times the capacity we actually need to catch what we sustainably require. We have built a fleet designed to empty the ocean.
2.5 times. And it is not just legal overcapacity. The illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, IUU fishing, nets criminal enterprises $36.4 billion a year.
It's massive.
In some high-value species, illegal fishing accounts for up to 30% of the entire global catch.
Wow.
And why is this happening? Why are so many boats out there when there aren't enough fish? Because of harmful government subsidies.
Right, of course.
Rich nations are paying billions of dollars to offset the fuel and equipment costs for these massive fleets. It artificially skews production costs so these operations keep running even when they make absolutely zero economic sense.
The cascading impacts of this tragedy are devastating. We are seeing the precipitous decline of keystone wildlife, bluefin tuna, Grand Banks cod.
It's heartbreaking.
And it's not just the fish we eat. Incredibly vulnerable species are caught as bycatch, destroying populations of sea turtles, the vaquita and Maui dolphins.
Just collateral damage.
Yeah, and when you remove that massive volume of biomass, you literally erode the foundational marine food web. And the threat isn't just ecological, it is a direct threat to human survival.
Right, people need to eat.
Half the world's population relies on fish as a major primary source of protein. It is a $362 billion global industry. When the fish disappear, entire coastal economies will collapse.
And for you listening in the U.S., do not think this is a distant problem. The U.S. imports 90% of its seafood. You are directly tied to the end of this global supply chain.
It's all connected.
So what do we do? How do we fix a market failure this massive?
Well, the WWF is pushing for a few major initiatives. First, expanding the Marine Stewardship Council, or MSC certification.
Okay, the little blue check mark on the fish?
Exactly. This is about fighting asymmetric information, giving consumers a label so they can actually identify sustainable wild-caught seafood.
That makes sense.
And for fisheries not ready for that gold standard, they use fishery improvement projects, or FIPs, to bring industry and local governments together to fix practices step by step.
That's a good start.
They're also fighting for strict supply chain traceability to stop those illegal imports from crossing borders, and advocating at the World Trade Organization to finally eliminate those harmful government subsidies.
Right.
On a broader scale, solutions to sustainability threats include strict national legislation, fishing quotas, and carbon taxes. There is also a brilliant market-based solution called cap-and-trade schemes, like the European Union's emissions trading system.
Wait, let's explain cap and trade because it always gets thrown around as a buzzword, but the mechanism is actually fascinating. How does it work?
It's essentially creating an artificial property right to solve the tragedy of the commons.
Oh.
The government decides on a strict limit, a cap, on total pollution.
So they draw a line in the sand.
Right. They then print a set number of permits that equal that cap and distribute them to companies.
Gotcha.
Here is the genius part. The companies can trade them.
Oh.
Yeah. If a factory cleans up its act and pollutes less than its permits allow, it can sell the extra permits for a profit.
So they make money by being green.
Exactly. But if a factory is dirty, it has to buy extra permits at a premium. It uses the free market's own greed to incentivize environmental protection.
That is so clever. But because things like the atmosphere and the oceans are global commons, international cooperation is the only real lasting fix, right?
No doubt.
And this isn't impossible. We've done it before. Look at the 1987 Montreal Protocol, where the world successfully agreed to phase out CFCs to save the ozone layer.
A huge win.
Or the 1997 Kyoto Protocol aimed at carbon emissions. It fundamentally requires the whole world to look at the potluck and agree to stop taking more than their fair share.
Which is incredibly difficult when the short-term economic incentive of every individual actor is always to take more.
Yeah. So what does this all mean for you? Today, we've journeyed through the unseen glitches in our economic operating system.
We really have.
We've seen how hidden information creates dangerous imbalances in the cars we buy, the medicine we take, and how we act when we are insured.
The expired potato salad.
Exactly. We've explored how monopolistic power stifles efficiency, hoards resources, and warps government intervention. We've unpacked the temptation to free ride on public goods.
The paper plates.
Right. And we've stared down the tragedy of the commons, where our race for profit pushes shared natural resources to the breaking point. It proves that the free market isn't a magical, flawless machine.
Not at all.
It needs careful curation, strict rules, and constant, intelligent intervention to actually function for society's benefit.
And that leaves us with something really important to consider as we look to the future. As human technology expands, we aren't just exploiting old resources. We are creating entirely new common access resources.
What do you mean?
Think about the Earth's orbit. Right now, private companies are launching thousands upon thousands of commercial satellites.
Oh, wow. Like the mega constellations?
Exactly. Low Earth orbit is quickly becoming highly rivalrous. There's only so much safe space up there before things start crashing into each other.
Yeah.
But currently, it is largely non-excludable. Anyone with enough money for a rocket can go up.
That's a recipe for disaster.
We are risking a literal tragedy of the commons in space, potentially trapping ourselves on Earth beneath a massive, impassable debris field. It raises the ultimate question as we push into the future. Who regulates the public good of the night sky?
That is a terrifying and fascinating thought to leave on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope the next time you are buying insurance, looking at a price tag, or even just looking up the stars, you question the hidden market forces operating all around you. The invisible hand is always moving, but it's up to you to notice what it's trying to hide.